staying safe, and good wishes to all your families in India. I think the situation is getting slightly better, not a whole lot better, but our prayers for everybody's health and well-being. So going back to, I know many of you have heard this many times, so I'm going to keep it short, but I think the important piece is that last week we celebrated that we crossed our 100,000 milestone, which was awesome. Our goal for this fundraising effort, this tranche of fundraising is 500,000. And I'm really, really excited to share that today, as of today, we are a little under 150,000. So great, a huge applaud and a humble thank you to all of you who have contributed. Last week, we had a few more donors. We, Radha Damodar Das and Atmamaya Mataji have contributed $10,000. We have an anonymous donor who has contributed 1,116. And then we've also had Amrita Mataji, Amit Prabhu, and Manish Rathi who've made contributions. So all in all, while we are at a very good place of 142,000, it's important to also recognize that our goal was 500,000 because, as you know, property in Austin, North Austin or South Austin, anywhere is very expensive today. So we want to continue being able to share out this information as much as possible. A few days ago in the WhatsApp group and on Facebook, we've shared this again. So it has two pieces so that it empowers you to be able to share with people outside our community. It has the flyer that gives you all the details about what we are raising funds for. And it also has benefits of building a temple. So if you're speaking with family or friends who are not, who believe in pious activities and who have a big heart, but don't understand what does it mean to build a temple and how will this benefit us, we live in the material world. We have to understand. So everybody is, at work, we have this phrase called VIFM. Everybody is asking, what's in it for me? And I think it's important to not only ask for donations from our family, friends, and people who we have remotely in our network also, but also give them an understanding of what is it in it for me. And that, few bullets that I shared, I didn't want to make it too long because then nobody reads it. So that has a few bullets which talks about the benefits of building a temple. So there is a tangible benefit for our lifetime. So please continue sharing this out in your WhatsApp groups, in your Facebook pages. Share the Jasubhadra Mataji shared it also. Share it on your own page. Let people know why it's so important to build a temple. So transitioning in, I found a nice, excerpt on glories of building a temple for Sri Hari, which I wanted to share with all of you. It definitely, I think once we read it, and I will share it in the WhatsApp group also, once we read it, it really, really inspires somebody to do what it takes to build a temple for Lord Krishna. So here it says, if one contributes towards temple construction, devotional service becomes increasingly more tangible and feasible reality of one's life. So somehow or other, Krishna will pull you into devotional service just by making a contribution towards the temple construction. Okay. Srila Prabhupada's intent, what it said, it's his transcendental scheme. I know in the US, we don't use the term scheme as much. You can call it a program or an offer or a provision. But in India, it's any program is also called a scheme. So his transcendental scheme in having us, his disciples built, is to have his disciples build temples around the world. For me personally, I've lived in so many cities and countries. Even in the US, this is my fourth or fifth location. And in each place, the one thing that we check if we are going to move is there a temple? Now, if there isn't a temple, I can tell you, it would put a barrier to us even, considering to move. And how did all these temples come up? They came up because Srila Prabhupada's disciples have built temples around the world. Lord Chaitanya had said there will be chanting of Hare Krishna movement in every town and village. And that is happening by the power and the mercy of Sri Krishna and his disciples. So Srila Prabhupada said it's especially important that his disciples build temples. It is especially an opportunity for fallen souls everywhere to acquire spiritual benefit by participation and by charity. So when when I was initially at the LA temple, every Sunday, some people would bring bags of rice, some people would bring flour, some people would leave milk. When we go to visit somebody, we always take something as an acknowledgement and gratitude to them. And we do the same when we come to the temple. And by doing this, we unknowingly are acquiring pious credit. So it is called Agyata Sukriti, unknowingly acquiring pious credit. In Srimad Bhagavatam, we find verses that say, by installing the deity of the Lord, one becomes the king of the entire earth. By building a temple for the Lord, one becomes ruler of the three worlds. By worshipping and serving the deity, one goes to the planet of Lord Brahma. And by performing all three activities, one achieves a transcendental form like my own. One who offers the deity gifts of land, markets, cities, and villages, so that the regular worship and special festivals of the deity may go on continuously, will achieve opulence equal to my own. So I always share with non-devotees as to what is it that you want from life. Okay, some people want fame, some want, their appearance and health and beauty, some want power, some want money. And I tell them, wonderful. And what would you do if you could get all of these, power, fame, wealth, knowledge, beauty, all of this? What if there was a way for you to get all of this? And they're like, there's no way you can get all of this. And I said, yes, there is, because when we go to Krishna, who is the reservoir of all of these and the original form of all of this, when we go to his loka, we get all of this. We get health. There's no duality in the spiritual world. And of course, it's a hard concept for people to understand and comprehend. But the more you engage yourselves in these activities, the more you realize that all these opulences, the reservoir of all these opulences is Sri Krishna. And the only way for us to ultimately be free from the miseries of the material world and not fall down to the hellish planets is to transcend. And by transcending, we will reach a point where we will be in no dualities, no sukh and dukh, day and night. It will all be very divine and opulous. So this is our opportunity. We have to contribute to Srila Prabhupada's movement. We have to do our share so that we are benefiting from what Srila Prabhupada's direct disciples did. We're probably in that second generation now. But if we don't continue this effort, if we don't continue investing in our youth, in the next generation, then they are not going to have the same opportunity that we had. And as parents, as citizens, it is our duty to contribute to the society, to spiritual life, so that in generations to come, they can only get increased benefit versus decreased benefit. We all know Kali Yuga will only keep increasing, and with the grip of Kali Yuga, I mean, a lot of people say today also that maybe this is Pralay, it is coming, and I'm like, no, it is not Pralay. Kali Yuga is supposed to last for 432,000 years, and we are only through 5,000 years. And people are feeling the misery even in these 5,000 years. This is just the beginning. So imagine, do we want our children to be reborn and go through several lives in Kali Yuga? It's only going to get harder. It's only going to get worse. And as Srila Prabhupada said, to sustain the same level of life and happiness, we will have to keep putting in more and more. And in his words, as if I remember correctly, it was said, for the same loaf of bread, you're going to have to work harder and harder. So again, it comes back to, if we do not have a temple and we are not able to give our children the right space and environment to grow into becoming devotees, it is a missed opportunity for this human birth for us. So please be the warrior, go out, reach out to people, reach out to anybody and everybody. They don't have to be Indian, they don't have to be American, just whoever you can reach out to, reach out and help us in this, help ourselves in this mission, in this goal of building the new temple of Hare Krishna, temple of Austin. I can tell you, when we go back to our adventure lane location, we know we are going to be out of space, but we want to build space. We want to create space for so many more devotee families to comfortably come there, bring their children, bring their parents, attend Sunday school, attend all the festivals, and increase the spiritual engagement in this human life. We do not have time to wait. So please, as you saw in my WhatsApp message, our contributions this week we're very thankful for that. So do not think that I'm not being appreciative, but we're still very far from our goal. So it is my humble request, please reach out to whoever you can so that we can continue building the funds for our new temple. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Swarna Manjari Mataji, for such a nice message. So with that, let us start with, we are going to move on to the next segment of our agenda, which is Bhagavad-Gita class. We have a very special speaker, Swarna Manjari Mataji. So just a quick introduction. Our Grace Swarna Manjari Mataji, she is very well known in our congregation for her wonderful Vaishnava qualities, melodious kirtans. She is very famous for melodious kirtans, and of course for her sincere devotion to Srila Prabhupada and serving Guru and Krishna. So she and Rahul Prabhu, her husband, are the pillar of support for our temple. As you see here, she is spearheading our temple fundraising initiative as well. So she does many other services in the background. So with that, let us welcome Swarna Manjari Mataji by chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra one time loudly. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Over to you, Mataji.
Thank you, Prabhu. So we'll start with Jai Radha Madhava before we get into the lecture. Jai Radha Madhava, Jayo Kunja Bihari, Jayo Radha Madhava, Jayo Kunja Bihari, Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha, Jaya Girivaradhari, Jaya Girivaradhari, Jaya नन्दना जयो व्रजजनरञ्जना जयो यमुनातीरवनचारी जयो कुञ्जबिहारी जयो यमुनातीरवनचारी जयो कुञ्जबिहारी जयो राधमाधवा जयो कुञ्जबिहारी जयो राधमाधवा जयो कुञ्जबिहारी हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय राधा माधवा जय कुंज बिहारी. Hare Krishna. I'm going to start sharing screen. Prabhuji, can you give me permission to share screen?
Sure, Mataji.
Thank you, Prabhuji. So we are going to start with our Pranam Mantras, and give me a second. It's always, even though we do it every day, it still trumps us sometimes. Thank you, everybody. We'll do our Pranam Mantras and then we'll go into the class. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupa Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Vishashri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchan Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayev cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Let us invoke all auspiciousness by chanting Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So for many weeks, I know we've been covering one or the other verse on chapter 15. So in the same light of continuation, Satyasar Prabhu requested chapter 15, verse 8. And like many others, chapter 15 is also a very, is one of my favorite chapters. And I used to hear this from people before, and I never understood why. And it was not until last year during Adhik Mas when we started chanting chapter 15, and my parents do it every day, morning, evening, and I used to never understand it. The just for me, reading that chapter was very difficult because the verses were very difficult. But for those of you who are in that situation, I want to tell you, initially it is, but afterwards it becomes so easy, so melodious, and so meaningful that you'll want to do it over and over again. So today's verse is, chapter 15 is Yoga of the Supreme Person. It's also called Purushottam Yoga. And today's verse is verse number 8. So I'm going to chant the verse, and after that, if we have two volunteers who will repeat it, that will be wonderful. Shariram yadavapnoti yachaputkramatishvara grihitvaitani samyati vayurgandhani vashayat. Do we have two volunteers who would like to recite the verse?
I can do, Mataji.
I can recite, Mataji.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Sariram yad avapnoti yachapi uttamatiswaraha grihitvaitani samyati vayurgandhan ivasayat.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Shariram yad avapnoti yachapi udgramat svira grihit vaitani samyati vayurgandham ishasayat.
Thank you, Mataji. So Shariram, the body. Sharir in Hindi is also body. Yat, as. Avapnoti, gets. Yat, as. Api, also. Utkramati, gives up. That means when we're giving up this body. Ishvara, the Lord of the body. Grihitva, taking. Etani, all these. Samyati, goes away. Vayu, the air. Gandhan, the smell. Iva, like. Asayat, from their source. Shariram yad avapnoti yachaputkramatishvara grihitvaitani samyati vayurgandhani vashayat. Translation: the living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another, as the air carries aromas. Thus, he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. So, one thing we know, we move from one body to another. So just like how the air carries, if there is any smell in the room, the air carries it. Sometimes a few seconds ago, I was trying to clear my throat, and that's because there was cooking in the kitchen, but that smell transferred from the kitchen to where I'm sitting because the air carried it. Likewise, our body, our soul goes from one body to another. That is a given. But we have the opportunity to take our soul from a material body to a spiritual body. So we will still have a body, but what kind of body we get is the question. So the living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another as the air carries aroma. Thus, he takes one body and again quits it to take another. Our children often ask us, and even as a child or sometimes even as an adult, we've asked this question, wow, this person is so lucky. What have they done, to be so lucky? Or this person has everything that we say they're gifted. In schools also you have these gifted programs. They're gifted. And sometimes, I hear, oh, she has beauty, they have brains, beauty, knowledge, wealth, everything. What have they done to get it? This is what it's going to tell us. Yes, there are actions that we carry from one lifetime to another, and that action forms that blueprint for what our next life is going to be. There is a very small book, and I don't know, it's not available here, but in India, my grandmother used to read it. It is called Bhagavad-Gita. And it pretty much talks about, different types of actions give you different types of reactions and bodies. And I know in Buddhism also there are several of those things. But the essence here is, what is it that we carry from one body to another? I think that is the whole purpose. And what should we be thinking of to carry from one body to another? So we're going to go into the purport. And before we get into the purport, this was a very powerful screenshot that I took. It says, at the time of death, the consciousness he has created will carry him onto the next type of body. Now, my mother says that even if you happen to accidentally kill an ant, say Hare Krishna immediately, because you're hoping that that consciousness you're transferring to that ant and they have a better next life. So the consciousness he has created will carry him to the next type of body. We all must have had some very good consciousness before coming to this human birth, because we are associated today with devotees, with the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. If he has made his consciousness like that of a cat or a dog, he's sure to change to a cat or a dog's body. And here, when they say cat or a dog, my interpretation is animalistic life. And what is animalistic life? In essence, to a large extent, eating, sleeping, mating, defending is an animalistic life. So without that spiritual and consciousness, God consciousness, we are leading an animalistic life. So my interpretation of this is that, if he has made his consciousness like that of a cat or a dog, he's sure to get a cat or a dog's body. Not that we think like a cat or a dog, but we are behaving like animals. And if he has fixed his consciousness on godly qualities, he will change into the form of a demigod. And if he is in Krishna consciousness, he will be transferred to Krishna Loka in the spiritual world and will associate with Krishna. So I started by saying, we all want all these different opulences and all the different blessings, okay, to lead our lives. But the biggest blessing is just transcending. It sounds a lot easier than what it is. Obviously, something that is so valuable, there is going to be, a criteria to get there. We know if it is in the material world, it's also going to be in the spiritual world. But we are there. We have started our journey. So let's not go take steps back. Let's be the latter part of this text, which says, if he is in Krishna consciousness, he will be transferred to Krishna Loka in the spiritual world and will associate with Krishna. I mean, how blissful. I know our Sunday lectures, and thankfully here we have Tuesdays and Wednesdays. They are all for us to recharge our energy and reconnect. It's very easy. Maya is so powerful that it is very easy. Even if we skip a week by going on vacation and others, which I know we all do, and which is, also important. But the important part is no matter what we do, we cannot dilute our connection to Krishna consciousness, because the moment we do that, Maya is sitting there so strong with open arms, throwing us baits every second of our life, and so easy to fall into it. I mean, personally for me, it's hard. It's hard motivating people around you. It's hard motivating yourself on a daily basis. But the one thing that we can do to keep ourselves motivated is read, chant, listen, make offerings to Krishna, do all those things which may look mundane at a material level, but it keeps awakening our consciousness that we're doing this for Krishna, either for Krishna or for us to get closer to Krishna. So this verse is reminding us that when we leave this body, it is whatever consciousness we have at that time, which will, just like the air carries aroma, our consciousness will be carried from one body to another. And the next body we get is going to be dependent on our consciousness, because that is like the smell in the air, which is going to move from one room to another or one body to another. We'll get into Srila Prabhupada's purport, and this was also from Srila Prabhupada's purport, but that the screen before that I was sharing was so powerful that I wanted to get that front and center. So Srila Prabhupada says, here the living entity is described as Ishvara, the controller of the body, because it says, Yatchapi Utkramat Ishvara. Okay, Ishvara, that means the controller of the body. If he or she likes, he can change his body to a higher grade. And if he likes, he can move to a lower class. I think a couple of weeks ago, I shared with the congregation that my mother was telling me as she was reading Srimad Bhagavatam that there are 21 levels of hell. That means hell is really, really massive planet, which means it's, like they say, you go to, when you're getting admissions, the Harvard is the hardest to get, and there are some which have a 90% acceptance rate. Likewise, I think hell has a very big acceptance rate, so it's very easy to slip and fall into hell, and different degrees of hell. But anybody who's targeting for a more select place, whether it is Harvard or the Harvard of our lives is going to be Golok Vaikuntha, Krishna Loka, Golok Vrindavan. So that is the Harvard for us. And we have to work really hard to get there. So it is up to us. The reason the living entity is described as Ishvara is because we control our actions. We have minute independence. Srila Prabhupada says minute. The word is minute. We all want to be independent. We all want to say, I want to be in a position where I only give, I don't take. I've heard this so much from everybody that I know. But who are we to give? We think we are giving. Who are we to give? We are giving because God has given it to us. So we have minute independence to make the right judgment. For example, contributing to the temple, that is our minute independence to decide where we put the Lakshmi. But let me also tell you, Lakshmi has her own ways. She will go where she has to, one way or the other. So better that we exercise the right judgment and, part with Lakshmi in the right way before she decides to part in the wrong way. So we have that minute independence, and the change that we undergo, whether at a soul level, depends on us. Srila Prabhupada is saying. So the two important things here is we are in a very small capacity, the controller of our body. We have minute independence, and that minute independence, and will determine how we change, which body we change to. So that depends on us. It is a false claim that after annihilation of this body, everything is finished. The individual soul is transmigrating from one body to another, and his present body and present activities are the background of his next body. one gets a different body according to karma, and he has to quit this body in due course. They say nothing is more certain than death and taxes, and it's death of the body, not the soul. So we have to quit this body and take another form, and that will be according to our karma. It is stated that the subtle body, which carries the conception of the next body, develops another body in the next life. This process of transmigrating from one body to another and struggling while in the body is called karshati, or struggle for existence. Moving on. So the question I always ask myself is, why do we have this independence? I've asked this so many times to myself, even though I know the answer. Some days I wish that I didn't have the independence, and that would make it so much easier for me to go back to God. But here Srila Prabhupada answers it very nicely. If the Supreme Lord were to interfere with the minute independence of the living entity, there would be no question of the living entities engaging in the loving service of the Lord, since love implies a spontaneous free choice by the lover. So you can't, and most of us who have children will understand this, because we would never want to impose on our children to love us or just show love to us, but they really don't love us. We want it to come from within. I'm going to give an example. So a few weeks ago was Mother's Day. So, different kids are different. And one of my kids who was like, oh yeah, it's Mother's Day. And she came and gave me a hug and said, Happy Mother's Day. The other one, got me gifts. But I know it's not about getting, and both of them love me the same way, but their expression is different. And just last week, one of them said, I'm not taking names because I don't want them to be embarrassed. Just last week, one of them said that, I don't thank you enough, but you do so much for us that I really want to tell you, I really appreciate it. Let me tell you, whether they said this on Mother's Day or whether they said it yesterday, it means the same thing. Mother's Day was just a day on the calendar. Like Rahul says, it's a, retailer's day so that people buy things. But the real love comes from within. And you cannot make somebody love you, because once you force them to love you, it is not love. And I think that is why, going back to, even though I asked this question many times as to why do we have this independence? If we didn't have it, we would naturally be on, we would be sitting on that train that took us to Krishna Loka. But Krishna says, no, if you love me, it has to be sincere love. It has to come from within. It has to be spontaneous. Srila Prabhupada continues, just as a child, having received a toy car from his father, pedals on the sidewalk, imitating the father who drives an actual car, the living entity pedals around the material universe in the innumerable material bodies selected for him by the Supreme Lord from an assortment of 8,400,000 species. Since the time I think I was 21, I used to hear my grandmother say, in India, you don't use millions, you use lakhs. So she would say, after 84 lakh births, we got this human birth. And being very ignorant at that age and just, full of youth and feeling invincible in life, I would say, how is that even possible that there are 84 million species? I only see people around me. So to me, human life did not look very rare at that time. But as I've probably moved in my journey from what I was 30 years ago, I understand now that no, this human life is so rare. It is so precious, and it comes with one primary goal. And that primary goal and that privilege that we have as humans, that privilege doesn't exist in other species. So let us, be mindful of this human life. For many of us, we've already lived half our lives, or maybe even more. We don't know. So it's really, really important that we engage spontaneously in the loving service of the Lord. Last bullet here says, thus the living entity, infatuated with false ego of the material body. I just shared a few minutes ago that 30 years ago, I was full of myself, thought I'm invincible. And in a lot, not to say that that false ego is gone. It exists in some way, shape, or form. And it surfaces itself in some way, shape, or form. So that false ego of the material body, we are infatuated by it, creates a fearful situation in which he undergoes repeated birth and death. As described in Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a statement, Bhayam Dvitiya Bhini Veshata Syat. We, as long as we keep engaging with this body and letting our false ego drive us, drive our actions, we are going to be in this cycle of repeated birth and death. And there is no guarantee that in this repeated birth and death, we may not fall from human life. And if we do fall from human life, we have to go through that full circle of 8,400,000 species to get to this point. So that is why our minute independence, even though it is minute, it is extremely critical as to how we manage our minute independence, because that is going to determine what's next. Okay. So got this from another place on ISKCON Desire Tree, and I thought this was really important for us to understand. So it is the mind which enjoys pleasure and suffers the pain. Okay. 50 years later, somebody was saying, 50 years later, I won't be this body, nor would my friends or so-called relatives who are expansions of this body. So, it's very possible many of us, will not be here in 50 years. Even if some of us make it beyond 50 years, okay, it would be like an invalid body which won't support normal life. And I remember many, many classes ago, one of our devotees talked a little bit about this as to, as mental and physical faculties keep deteriorating, we may not even be in, my aunt, she passed away from Alzheimer's, okay? She had no consciousness of what is going on. So anybody can be hit at any time with, with diseases that can make our body even invalid in terms of we cannot do much with our body, mentally, physically, either way. So that's an important piece to understand, even though we may think that I'm going to retire in 10 years and then I will start, but I don't know what life in 10 years is going to be. Last year, I heard so many people say, I can't wait for 2020 to be over. I don't think they would repeat that again, because 2021 has been harder than 2020. So let's live in that present moment and use our minute independence to do what is right in the present moment. The third bullet here says, if we don't live in this city of 9 gates, that is this body has 9 gates. If we don't live in this city of 9 gates beyond 50 years, why should I endeavor so much and care this body taking all my lifetime? We spend so much energy. I think it's good, and this is just personal, so if I'm offending somebody, please forgive me. I think it's good to take care of your health. It's good to take care of your body. But I remember reading once when Prabhupada had said, endeavor is good, over endeavor is not. So don't get so consumed, whether it is job or health or money or anything. Don't get so consumed with anything that it becomes the prime goal of your life. I've seen people of all kinds in 50 years now, and balance is most important. The one thing that you can get out of that will not hurt you, excess of which is not going to hurt you, is chanting, reading, anything spiritual. Excess of that will not hurt you. That is guaranteed. So the last bullet speaks to that. This world is a perfect jail. And unless we develop intense greed to attain Krishna, he could never be achieved. Intense greed is the price to develop bhakti and attain Krishna. So I'll go to the next page where it says, I edited the words here a little bit because it says to buy Krishna. And I was like, no, how can you buy Krishna? But then when I read the next verse, and in the next slide, it'll probably say that, I think we have to take it not in the material sense, but in the spiritual sense. The point here is that we are very trapped in the day-to-day, which is normal because we have family lives, we have to do it, but we really have to be deliberate and intentional to carve out that dedicated time for Krishna. I know in a awake day of 12 hours, nobody is spending 12 hours on Krishna consciousness in a family life. But while you're cooking, if you can chant or listen to music, dedicate some time in the evening and morning to read, chant, listen to lectures. Even if we took out 3 hours out of 12 for Krishna, that's a great place for us to develop that spontaneous love. Krishna will give it to us. If we don't also have it, Krishna will give it to us. We were sharing with somebody a few weeks ago that when we first got Laddu Gopal, my mother's guru gave us Laddu Gopal on our wedding. Okay. And for 3 years, Laddu Gopal sat on a shelf. And even when after 3 years, we realized that we need to serve Laddu Gopal, we didn't know. We used to eat bread butter, and we used to, in the morning before having breakfast, we used to offer bread butter to Laddu Gopal. I mean, now when I think about it, it feels gross and sinful to me. But we did it. And because we did it with the right intent, we used to, when we had to do Abhishek, we didn't even know, how to do Abhishek. Rahul and I were just on our own, and we were figuring out things on our own. We went and got the best soap. Okay, at that time, the best soap was some liquid Dove soap, and we would bathe Laddu Gopal with that Dove soap. And one day when I shared this with one of my Shiksha gurus, she was aghast. She's like, really? You've been doing this? I'm like, you told me whatever you eat, you offer to Krishna. Because I was going to eat bread butter, I offered bread butter to Krishna. And she said, okay, now you've taken this too far, and you need to get into some form of what they would say framework. So she taught me. She came to our house. She taught us how to do seva, how to do Abhishek, and how to offer food to Krishna. The point here is that Krishna is so merciful that if you do it with the right intent, if you do it out of spontaneous love, he will reveal himself to you, and he's so kind. He doesn't need anything from us. I know I keep making this spiel on we need to raise funds, we need to build a temple. Krishna doesn't need that for us. We are doing that for ourselves so that we can stay engaged with Krishna. We are not doing it for Krishna. When Lakshmi Devi is his consort, why would he need anything from us? But we talk about greed in a very negative way. They always say anger, lust, greed. These are the 3 gates to hell. Yes, they are. But if we utilize these for Krishna, okay, we will see the result is different. And the next piece that I'm going to share is about that. So Srila Rupa Goswami wrote, pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness cannot be had even by pious activity in hundreds and thousands of lives. So what are pious activities? Pious activities are doing charity, helping somebody in need. All the activities that come in the mode of goodness are pious activities. But pious activities do not get us to pure devotional service and do not get us in Krishna consciousness. So how do we get to Krishna consciousness? It can be attained by paying one price, and that is intense greed to obtain it. So if you want to keep greed for getting Krishna. If it is available somewhere, one must purchase it without delay. So that purchase it piece did not resonate very well with me till I read this piece. And I shared earlier, I changed the words a little bit in the slide before because I couldn't come to terms with how can you purchase Krishna. You can purchase that, you can develop that intense greed. Okay, and how do we purchase it? By associating with devotees who have that intense greed for Krishna. It's okay to be competitive, but competitive where? Where you're going to move towards Krishna. It's okay to be greedy, where you're going to move towards Krishna. Prema Bhakti Chandrika. So this is from there. It says, following in the mood of Srila Rupa Goswami, the Vaishnav saint, Srila Narottam Das Thakur, has explained how any tendency that is an obstruction to our spiritual advancement can be transformed by relating it to Krishna. He specifically describes how the 6 enemies of lust, anger, greed, illusion, envy, and pride can be conquered. I'm sure everybody here has at least one or more of these. So how do we conquer them? I will engage lust, anger, greed, illusion, envy, and pride in their proper places. In this way, I will defeat the enemies, and with the ecstasy in my heart, I will worship Govinda without difficulty. I will engage my lust in eagerness to serve Krishna, and I will engage my anger against those who are envious of devotees. So when I first read that you can engage anger, lust, and greed, I was like, lust and greed, I understand, but how anger? And this says it, I will engage my lust in eagerness to serve Krishna, and I will engage my anger against those who are envious of devotees. So if you have to get angry at that. I will be greedy. If you have to be greedy, I will be greedy to hear the topics of Hare in association of devotees. I will be illusioned if I fail to achieve my worshipable Lord, and I will feel proud to chant the glories of Krishna. In this way, I will engage them in their respective duties. So this was so powerful and so beautiful. And I had never read this before till the time I was preparing for this lecture, that how we can engage all our weaknesses, lust, anger, greed, illusion, envy, pride, all of them, and how we can channelize them in a way that we still have them, but because we are utilizing them in service of Krishna, we nullify the effect of all of those. So very beautifully said. And one other thought that comes to my mind that's not on the slide is, we always talk about detachment. We should not be very attached to family life, to children, to our dogs, to any money, all of that. So how do you gain the detachment? Because it is our human nature that gets us attached to various things. So detachment is really attachment to Krishna. So detachment from worldly pleasures will only come when we develop attachment to Krishna. Likewise, we can channelize these 6 enemies to help us get attached to Krishna, and that will automatically get us detached from other things. So this is a continuation from the script that I was reading. It's Srila Prabhupada says, look at this, look at that, all are pitfalls. When we say, look what she did. This is exactly what I was saying. She doesn't have respect. She doesn't do this. We keep talking like this. And I'm sorry if others don't do it, but I have, we are very, by human nature, we're very critical. It's very easy for us to find faults with other things. But we have to look at ourselves. These are all pitfalls, and they are trapping me into this world at any moment. No use to look anywhere, but within, that means look in your own heart to hear the call from my Lord. Initially, I'm going to pause here, but initially, when I used to get opportunities for service, it was very easy for me to say no to them. Okay, early years. Today, when I get an opportunity for service, I look at it differently. I'm like, oh, this is Krishna telling me, go do it. So listen to the voice, the call of the Lord, and do it. Don't think. If you're getting an opportunity for service, if you're getting an opportunity to grow in your spiritual life in whatever way, shape, or form, do it. I'll tell you why. The more you do it, the more you hear the call of God. So do it. My own desire to engage here, what kills my soul life after life. So our desire to enjoy is what is the biggest barrier. And that, puts us in this repeated cycle of birth and death. There are a lot of things that happen in our life which sometimes create a moral conflict. And because of being in dualities, it drives us crazy to go nuts and get lost. So this is, I'm reading all this from Srila Prabhupada's lectures. So I'll get this, there's more explanation in the next slide. But the important thing here is dualities of life. So we are always in a conflict, sometimes we want to do things and we're still not able to because there's some mental, emotional conflict. And that's because we live in a world of dualities. But when we get to the spiritual world, that has no dualities. So that's going to be a great place for us to be in. In Mahabharata, and this is something which everybody must have heard or learned, and for those who haven't, this will be very interesting to understand. Bhishma Dev had a moral conflict when Draupadi was pleading for help, and as she was disrobed by the Kauravas, and so he had a hard time making a decision and couldn't help her. Similarly, life throws us into many situations which makes us feel totally drowned in a life of sorrows. So for the kids who may or may not know, when Draupadi was being disrobed, she begged and she asked for Bhishma Dev to protect her. Bhishma Dev was a very, he was a very good devotee. He always did what was right. But his conflict was, he had taken an oath to serve the king. And if he had to serve the king, he was not able to help Draupadi. And these are the situations when we are in conflict and that we are not able to, do what, even though our heart wants to do it, we're not able to do it. So how do we get out of these dualities? In Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 2, verse 45, Krishna says, "O Arjuna, be transcendental to all of them. Be free from all dualities and from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self." So what does this mean? As long as the material body exists, there are actions and reactions in the material modes. One has to learn tolerance in the face of dualities such as happiness and distress, cold and warmth. And by tolerating such dualities, one becomes free from anxieties regarding gain and loss. The transcendental position is achieved for full Krishna consciousness when one is fully dependent on the good will of Krishna. So granted, as long as we are in this material life, there's going to be actions and reactions. In fact, my grandmother used to say that do not do too many pious activities also. Because if you're too much in the mode of goodness, then also there will be reaction, right? the reaction of good is good, but you will have to come back in human birth to take the, to get the reward of those good actions. So she would say, don't do too many pious activities. If you have to do anything of too much, and in her, in her time, when Krishna consciousness was a different version, because Srila Prabhupada was not here and they were not, as privy to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement. But in her form, she would say, serve Thakurji, talk to Thakurji. And Thakurji in her life was Laddu Gopal, for all you know. So she would say, no, don't go too much in that direction also, because then you'll have to come back to get the benefits of that good karma. So keep your karma balanced and try to channelize as much activity, because the only activity that does not result in reaction is activities in Krishna consciousness. So that is extremely important. And how do we do it? Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has said, Trinadapi sunichana taroreva sahishnuna amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari. So be even tone. Happiness, distress, be even tone. So you tolerate it. And don't have anxiety. You will have gain, you will have loss. It's okay. Because ultimately, if we are dependent on the will of Krishna, as my dad said, it is not my will, it is thy will, he'll always say. So we have to be dependent on the will of Krishna. And if we have become dependent on Krishna, then nothing is worrying us. A few weeks ago, my parents had COVID in India, and they went through, at their age, getting COVID is not easy. And, we are three sisters, all three of us had different reactions. But one thing we all anchored to is, even though our emotional response to everything was different, one thing we all anchored to is, if it is Krishna's will, they will come through it. And if Krishna has decided that this is time, we will have to accept it. Fortunately, for us, that they came through it and they are fine, but it was Krishna's will, because I've seen people with no comorbidity, good health, much younger, get impacted. So why is that happening? Because ultimately we have to depend on Krishna's will. Moving on, there's no use to waste time in talking about other people's mistakes. Like I said, we are very good at being critical. Okay, so let's stop doing that. Or how we were ill-treated, or how we were not understood despite our constant efforts to make them understand. We do this a lot with our kids. We do this most with our loved ones. So there is no use to talk about it. We really have to have faith in Krishna, say things to them, and hope that they understand. In the middle of the ocean, what can you do if there is a storm? Only tolerate and try to see how soon you can get out of the ocean. This material life is such a deep ocean where all of us are trapped. We are running out of time to make a chance to get back home out of this ocean, which has got ferocious animals that can eat us alive. I think the way, when you read this, it paints a picture in front of your eyes. And that is why I say, read at least one verse a day. It transforms how you start looking at life. And Srila Prabhupada had the gift of really painting a picture with his words. So what this verse 15.8 reminded me of, and I wanted to share this before we come to the conclusion of this verse, and I know it's getting to time. Antakale cha mameva smaran muktva kalevaram ya prayati samadbhavam yati nastyatra samshaya. And whoever at the end of his life quits his body, remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this, there is no doubt. Anyone who quits his body in Krishna consciousness is at once transferred to the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord is the purest of the pure. Therefore, anyone who is constantly, it's important, constantly Krishna conscious, is also the purest of the pure. The word smaran, remembering, is very important. Remembrance of Krishna. This is very important because when I was young, I thought I will do this. And I now know it's not possible. Remembrance of Krishna is not possible for the impure soul who has not practiced Krishna consciousness in devotional service. Therefore, one should practice Krishna consciousness from the very beginning of life. And I know that the very beginning of life, Krishna consciousness is only, available to very few people. But whenever you start, please focus that we will not remember Krishna if we have not practiced it all of life. When we go for an exam, we practice, memorize, do everything. This is the same. This is life's exam. If one wants to achieve success at the end of his life, I think that if I ask anybody, do you want success or failure? The answer is going to be success, no matter what. But this is success of life. Okay, this is the biggest success we can get. The process of remembering Krishna is essential. Therefore, one should constantly and incessantly chant the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Wrapping it up, what is our learning from 15.8? Krishna is giving us clarity through fragrance. He's using fragrance as a way to give us clarity. Wind or air carries fragrance from one body and leaves the body to take another body. So just like the wind or air carries fragrance, we carry our karmic actions from one body to another. Similarly, our soul takes all the fragrance of our godliness or our inner growth and takes it to the new body. Krishna is talking about the great responsibility because he said, you're Ishvara, the controller of this body, the great responsibility towards ourselves. And what we can carry when we are leaving this body is only our soul. So very important, that minute independence, if we do not use it properly, it is going to change what next life looks for us. And let's remember, there are hellish planets. There is 432,000 years of Kali Yuga. We're not going to be out of this trap. We're going to keep falling in this trap. The individual soul is transmigrating from one body to another, and his present body and present activities are the background of his next body. Just like what you study in school takes you to where you go to college. Like that, what we do in this life determines what body we get next life. One gets a different body according to one's actions in life. While leaving the one body and taking the new body are conditioning. So the conditioning of our soul and discipline. Discipline is our action. The activities play a very, very important role. So I know I've spoken for almost 45 minutes. I'm going to pause here, stop screen sharing and open it up to Satyasar Prabhu and anybody who has questions, which I will attempt to answer, cannot guarantee because I'm also learning like all of you.
Sure, Mataji. Devotees, please feel free to ask questions.
Hare Krishna Mataji, great class. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, Mataji.
So I have a quick question. So you mentioned about not doing too much of pious activity because that can come bring you back to the material world. So my question is, so you are trying to we are trying to orient ourselves to Krishna consciousness, and along the ways we also, maybe somebody is coming and asking for help, which can make their lives better if we do, say, for, any donation for their specific issue. So in those situations, if you don't do it, also you would gain bad karma, right? So that's sometimes it's very hard to decide where to what to do in those situations. Is God, and maybe God is sometimes your inner voice says maybe God is sending this person to you to go and get some help, and
Yes,
you deny
Mataji.
that.
Very good question. And this recently happened to us. A friend of ours who was 45, he went to help his parents in India and he passed away. There was a fundraiser for him, and we sent a check, we sent some, but along with that, I sent them Nursing Kavach. I sent them the recording of Nursing Kavach, and I said, please chant this during these difficult times. So while I wanted to help through a good karma, I don't want to stop myself from spreading Krishna consciousness along with it. And by them listening to Nursing Kavach, which I had recorded for them, I feel that I have channelized this activity in towards Krishna with Krishna consciousness, because I don't want that philanthropy award in my next life. I really want that if I can make one person listen and read Nursing Kavach or pray to Lord Nrsimha, that is my contribution. It's not so much the money. When I was talking about too much, I was talking about, all the philanthropic people like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, and they're doing so much for the whole world, immense. And you can see that this life also they have is probably a result of some pious activities. But that doesn't protect them from falling down. It still doesn't protect them from disease, old age, death. So keeping that in mind, and Satyasar Prabhu, if you can jump in, keeping that in mind, I was trying to say, be balanced, and wherever possible, inject Krishna consciousness in your activities.
Yeah, I mean, you summed it up so well, Mataji. I mean, only one equation I'll give you, or formula to remember, is a real care equal to spiritual care plus material care. That's a real care. So yes, if somebody is hungry, as you said, we as a fellow human beings, we have to help them. Give them food, but give them prasadam. So that is material care plus spiritual care, both. Like how Mataji gave Narshinga Kavach along with the check or whatever. So that is like a material care plus spiritual care. Makes sense, Mataji?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you, Mataji. One follow-up question though, right? If you are dealing with people who are who don't have very much background on Hinduism or Krishna consciousness, then they right away think, we are trying to push our concepts to them. Just like how when we grow up or go to Christian schools, we always think that we are getting, they teach you, but they also try to push their concepts to you. So it's just a very fine line, and maybe it just comes to me, okay, we shouldn't offend them by pushing our concepts because they don't know our thing. So just trying to get some help on that aspect also, if they don't have a background.
I'll give you an example, Mataji. Many years ago, I had a boss whose husband was fighting cancer, okay, and he was terminally ill. And at that point, she was very devastated. So I didn't tell her what it is. I gave her an actual Nursing Kavach, and I told her this is a prayer box, okay, and make your husband wear it in whatever, and gave her a kanthi with it, and it looked very classy to her, so she took it. And I said, put your prayer, because Nursing Kavach, you can open it. So I told her this is like a prayer box, put your prayer in it and make your husband wear it. She took it very happily, and she made her husband wear it. She put her prayer in it. Her husband passed away, and when she came back to the office, she was wearing it. So I told her, I'm really sorry that your husband passed away. She's like, that's okay. But this prayer box, I'm going to keep, because I'm going to pray for him wherever he is. And I'm going to, this is going to at least protect me. So without giving her Hinduism or Krishna consciousness or anything, I subtly passed it to her, and at least till the time we were working together, she used to wear it every day.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, Mataji. Yeah, sure.
Can I add one more point, Mataji? Swarna Manjari Mataji? A beautiful, so thanks for sharing that. So Sridevi Mataji, and another thing we have to think about is not just in this life we are helping the souls. The souls, it is a multi-life journey towards Krishna. That's how Krishna arranged everything. The entire material world, scriptures, and everything is. Sometimes it takes multiple lifetimes to reach him, right? So sometimes what happens is people, as you pointed out, they will think, oh, we are pushing our belief system on them or something like that. If that is the case, you can still help materially, but you can still pray for them. When you help them, for example, there are kids here in Austin. So I'm also part of a non-profit organization in Austin. They are not Krishna conscious non-profit, but it is focused on the underprivileged children's education, right? Where I educate them, I mentor them, I teach them math or whatever. There, I'm not directly preaching Krishna consciousness, but I'm just building the connection there. So since I'm part of that and I'm just doing whatever I could do with my limited capacity, they appreciate me. That means they're appreciating Krishna also. So indirectly, they're building the Sukruti. So that Sukruti will help them, even if not in this lifetime, but the next lifetime, because they are associated, they are appreciated, even imperfect devotee, but they're appreciating Krishna actually through that. So that Sukruti will help them at some point in their life journey towards Krishna, and they will just get faith, faith. So Sukruti transforms into faith at some point in life or in lifetimes. So we need to have that kind of a long-term vision. Make sense to you? We can pray for them. We can help them if they are not using our help in a anti-devotional way, giving education, giving food, whatever. That is all good actually. Goodness.
Makes
Even
sense,
though they
Prabhuji.
appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much, Prabhuji. Yeah, thank you so much, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Any other questions or comments to Mataji?
Hare Krishna Mataji, wonderful, amazing class. Thank you for. I didn't have any questions, but really enjoyed the each and every points you mentioned. Thank you, Mataji. Looking forward to more of your classes. Hare Krishna.
Okay. So with that said, we'll do a quick thank you note. Sugopi Mataji.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna Swarna Manjari Mataji. It was a lovely class. And you sang the bhajan Jaya Radha Madhav so sweetly. It was so enchanting. And I jotted down few points from your lecture. So, first of all, this 8th shaloka of 15th chapter was a very good decision on the part of Satyasai Prabhu, which he gave it to you. And it shows the reality of life. And from 15th chapter is Purushottam Yoga, an excellent one of the chapter from Bhakti Yogas. And you talked about many things like opportunity, to go to the spiritual world from one body to another. And you gave an example of the book Bhagavad-Gita, which consists of different types of bodies and its actions. And then you shared a very powerful screenshot, which was very helpful in comparing consciousness of human life to the animalistic life, and how blissful are we to be in Krishna consciousness, to be transferred to Krishna lok in the spiritual world by if we keep on chanting. And you gave very good example of having greed for like endeavor. Too much endeavor is not good, but it is good in the spiritual life, and we should have greed for Krishna. And then you described about Srila Prabhupada giving example of then 21 levels of hell also. And then we have to work really hard though we have minute independence to decide rightly, as it makes the decision of transmigration of soul from one body to another in the next birth. And these were all, and then you cited uh, Prema Bhakti Chandrika book, which was excellent to increase your devotion. And he gave the example of Bhishma Dev from Mahabharata, which was an example of conflict on dualities and how to take care of your anxieties and dualities as mentioned by Lord Krishna in Bhagavad-Gita 2.45 to be transcendental to these two qualities. And finally, you gave the Shloka example of 5 from chapter 8 in Bhagavad Gita, Antkalecha Mameva, and that was how to remember Lord Krishna so that we can practice Krishna consciousness all throughout our life by chanting and glorifying Lord and listening to the Krishna conscious tapes and taking out some time from our daily life. Thank you so much. It was all throughout a wonderful lecture of yours.
Thank you, Mataji, for summing it up so beautifully.
Welcome, Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji. So with that, we'll do a quick announcement. Radha Damodar Prabhu will do. Then we'll do Narsimha Arati. Radha Damodar Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. So we have a few announcements. So we had one birthday this week. That's Madhuri Venugopal Mataji. So let's chant Hare Krishna Mahamandra 3 times for their benefit. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. And we have a very important program coming up this week. On Tuesday evening, on 25th May, from 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m., we have a Narasimha Chaturdashi celebrations going to happen. It's an online only program, so please, but we'll have a live telecast of the Arati from the temple. So, but it's, and those who are signed up for Prasadam, will be distributing Prasadam to their home. So it's an online only program. And please make sure to invite your family and friends, and please advertise as much as possible so that more and more people get the mercy of Narasimha Bhavan. Okay, please, Hare Krishna. Now we have one more thing. We have one more special request. To request everyone to make a special prayer to Lord Narasimha Dev for the parents of Rasamai Mataji. Mataji is our very core member of our community, and her parents are affected by COVID-19 in India. So please continue your prayer for speedy recovery. Hare Krishna. So let's pray for them as well by chanting one time Hare Krishna Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. That's all, Prabhuji. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Now, our dear Samanvita will sing Narsimha Arati, and we'll dedicate Narsimha Arati for Rasamai Mataji's parents' speedy recovery. Over to you, Samanvita. Hare Krishna Samanvita, it was very nice. Thank you very much for nicely singing. So with that, Hare Krishna devotees, will conclude our virtual Sunday Feast program. See you all next week during Narsingha Chaturdashi celebration this Tuesday. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Mataji.